I never thought a single text could break my heart, especially during Christmas week. My phone buzzed while I was adjusting the last ornament on the tree. I picked it up and there it was. A few cold words that hit harder than anything I'd expected. Mom, we're doing Christmas at Emily's parents' place this year. It's just easier. Hope you understand. Nothing else? No warmth? No, I love you. Just erasure, polite and final. I sank into my armchair, staring at the tree I had decorated myself. Each ornament told a story. Daniel's first glittery snowflake. The tiny sleigh my husband gave me on our first Christmas. Together, the golden star we always placed on top. And now, every piece felt like a reminder that I didn't belong in my own son's life. My chest tightened. My hands shook. And for a moment I wondered if I had failed as a mother, if all the years of giving, of loving, had been for nothing. Memories flickered like old film. I remembered Daniel at 5, running around in pajamas, hair dusted with snow, his laugh filling the apartment. I remembered the night Emily had said sweetly, almost like sugar hiding poison, "You don't need to worry about Christmas this year. Mom, I'll handle everything." I had smiled then, believing she was helping. I had been wrong. That smile had marked the beginning of my erasure. I rose and walked through the quiet apartment, the city lights outside glimmering through the windows. Richard had left me a fortune, a life of comfort. And yet none of that seemed to matter in this moment. Perhaps I had believed that giving Daniel everything, college, his first car, a wedding, even the down payment on his home, would make him remember me, treasure me. But giving had not guaranteed love. In fact, it had created distance. I sat by the fireplace, wrapping my fingers around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. I thought of all the subtle ways Emily and Daniel had edged me out. Dinners I wasn't invited to. Birthday parties celebrated without me. Casual phone calls that ended with, "We'll call you later." The cruelty of exclusion is quiet, almost invisible, but it pierces the heart just the same. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered through the mansion in Westchester that I had not visited in years. Dust gathered on the chandeliers. The floors creaked under my weight, and the rooms smelled faintly of winter and old wood. And yet, in this silence, I felt a pulse. Memories lingered here, of laughter, of family, of warmth. I ran my fingers along the piano keys where Daniel had once clumsily played Jingle Bells. I closed my eyes and let the sound fill me, and then it struck me. If my son would not let me into his world, I would create my own. The next morning I made the call. "Ellen," I said, my voice steady but my heart still fluttering with uncertainty. "I want the mansion cleaned and decorated. Find a caterer for 50 people. I'm hosting Christmas this year." For a brief moment I questioned myself. Could I really do this alone? Would anyone show up? My heart wavered, and I felt the familiar sting of loneliness. But I refused to let it paralyze me. This would be my Christmas, on my terms. Ellen hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Of course, Mrs. Bennet. We'll make it perfect." Over the next few days, the mansion transformed. Garlands and twinkling lights hung from every doorway. The dining room gleamed with polished silver and crystal, and the scent of cinnamon and roasted chestnuts filled the air. Invitations went out to old friends, charity partners, even Richard's former colleagues. The responses were warm, enthusiastic. Every reply a reminder that I was still seen, still valued. Christmas Eve arrived, and snow coated the city in silver light. Guests began arriving, laughter and chatter filling the hallways. Children ran around, tugging at coats, their eyes wide with wonder. Music played softly in the background. I greeted each person with a calm smile, but inside my heart raced with the tension of what was to come. Would Daniel see any of this? Would he feel even a flicker of regret? During the party, something unexpected happened. A small child tugged on my coat, pointing at the tree. "You made this all so pretty," he said, eyes shining. "It feels like magic." I knelt beside him, brushing back his hair. "Thank you, sweetheart. That's exactly what I hoped for." His words struck me in a way I hadn't anticipated. In this moment, I realized that my worth wasn't determined by whether my son included me or not. It was determined by the joy I could create, the love I could give, the warmth I could share. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. My chest tightened. I opened the message. "Wow, your party looks amazing. I didn't realize how much I missed this. Merry Christmas, Mom." For a heartbeat, I felt the old pang of longing. But instead of replying, I set the phone down. The mansion was alive with laughter, music, and the scent of celebration. The snow fell softly outside, covering the city in a quiet blanket of silver. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Merry Christmas, Clara." And for the first time in years, I felt whole. I had been excluded, yes, but I had reclaimed my space, my joy, my dignity. I had built something beautiful in the face of absence. And that, I realized, was more powerful than any apology or message could ever be. I paused near the window, watching the snow glint against the city lights. I asked myself quietly, almost as if I were speaking to the audience, would you ever invite yourself into a life you felt excluded from? The thought made me smile. Tonight I had, and it was enough. The next morning the mansion felt different. The laughter had faded, the music silenced, but warmth lingered in the air like sunlight through frosted windows. I walked slowly through the rooms, noticing little reminders of the night before. A half-finished game of cards, a tiny scarf a child had left behind, the scent of cinnamon still clinging to the curtains. Every corner told a story of joy, and for the first time in years, I felt the house truly mine. I sat by the window sipping a cup of tea, watching the city streets below. The snow reflected the morning sun, and I felt a quiet satisfaction I hadn't known in years. My phone buzzed gently. It was a message from my friend Martha. "Clara, the photos are beautiful. You looked so happy. You've reminded everyone what Christmas should feel like." I smiled, letting her words sink in. For weeks I had questioned myself, doubted whether I could handle this alone. Now the evidence was clear. I had not just survived. I had created something wonderful. A notification from social media caught my eye. Curious, I tapped it open and froze. Daniel had liked a photo from the party. The one where I stood near the fireplace, a glass of wine in hand, children running around me. My stomach twisted. Pride and a twinge of ache mixed in a strange swirl. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. A part of me wanted to reply, to acknowledge that I had noticed, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and let the moment settle. The day moved slowly. I wandered through the mansion, checking on small things left behind. A toy car under the couch, a hat on the staircase, a half-finished cup of cocoa. Each small trace reminded me of the joy I had created. Ellen appeared from the kitchen holding a tray of fresh pastries. "Mrs. Bennet, the staff keeps saying they haven't seen you this happy in years," she said, smiling. I chuckled softly. Maybe I was waiting for permission to be happy, I murmured. Later, a funny little moment brought me unexpected joy. A guest's cat, brought along for the party, leapt onto the grand piano and startled a few children, who shrieked and then laughed uncontrollably. I rushed over, scooping the mischievous animal into my arms, smiling as everyone laughed. Even small chaos felt magical. I realized I could handle the surprises life threw at me with grace. A lesson I hadn't fully understood before. That evening, another message appeared from Daniel. My chest tightened. "Mom, I saw the photos. I didn't know you'd go all out like this. I feel terrible. Can we talk?" My hands hovered over the phone. Again that old pull. The hope that maybe I could bridge the gap tugged at me. I resisted. Slowly, deliberately, I set the phone aside. I had chosen my happiness. I wouldn't let his guilt or absence control me. By late evening, I wandered past the living room where a small group of friends lingered near the fireplace. One leaned close and said softly, "Clara, you've brought warmth back to this house, and to all of us. Thank you for letting us share it." I blinked, touched by the sincerity. "Thank you," I whispered. "It feels like the house has come alive again." The night wound down. I passed through the halls, checking on the last few remnants of the celebration. A child's scarf had fallen near the steps. I picked it up, straightened it, and draped it carefully over a chair. These small gestures, unnoticed by most, reminded me that attention to detail and care could bring quiet joy. My heart felt lighter with each action. Finally, I stood by the window, watching snow glint against the city lights. Daniel's messages lingered in my mind. The ache of absence hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had softened into calm clarity. Love isn't always returned in the way we hope, I realized, and sometimes dignity, grace, and self-respect matter more than acknowledgement. I whispered almost to myself, and to anyone listening, would you ever invite yourself into a life you felt excluded from? I smiled. Tonight I had done just that, and it was more than enough. The day after the party, the mansion felt alive in a new way. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting warm patterns on the polished floors. I moved through the rooms, tidying a few things left behind, but mostly just savoring the quiet after the laughter. Every corner reminded me of the joy I had created, of the people who had shown up, and of the love that had been missing for far too long. My phone buzzed again. I recognized Daniel's name instantly. I hesitated before opening the message. "Mom, I can't stop thinking about the party. I should have been there. Can I come by?" For a moment, my chest tightened, and a familiar mix of hope and fear churned inside me. I set the phone down and stared out the window at the city below. The snow was starting to melt, leaving tiny puddles that reflected the golden afternoon sun. A part of me wanted to rush to him, to explain, to apologize for my own hurt. But a stronger part whispered, "I have already created my happiness. That doesn't depend on him." I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone. Ellen peeked in and said softly, "Mrs. Bennet, there's a man here asking for you. He says he's your son." I froze. "Daniel here?" I didn't expect him today. Not yet. Not like this. I took a deep breath, smoothing my cardigan, and walked to the door. He stood there looking hesitant, unsure, and yet undeniably my son. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time I saw a flicker of genuine regret. "Mom," he started, voice low. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have left you out. The party, it looked amazing. Everyone looked happy. I didn't realize how much I missed this." I studied him quietly. My heart softened, but my voice stayed calm. "Daniel," I said slowly, "you saw the party. You saw the joy, the warmth, and yet you weren't here when it mattered." He flinched slightly, as if he hadn't expected that. I know. His words faltered. I took a step back and gestured for him to come in, but not too close. "Sit, Daniel. Let's have tea. But understand this. My happiness doesn't depend on your acknowledgement. I created this for me, not for anyone else. Do you understand?" He nodded, swallowing hard. I poured the tea and handed it to him. There was a long silence as he sipped, trying to gather the right words. I watched him fidget, his hands trembling slightly. I realized that the weight of absence, of exclusion, was finally hitting him. As he set down his cup, he looked around the room. "Mom, this place... You did all this, alone?" I smiled softly, thinking of all the preparation, the little gestures, the hours of planning. Alone, yes, but not lonely. I had help from friends, from Ellen, from those who truly care, and the rest I had within me. He swallowed again, his eyes glistening. I didn't know you still had that strength." "You didn't need to know," I replied quietly. "It was never about impressing you. It was about living my life fully, even when I felt excluded." At that moment, a small guest, a little girl who had come over to drop off a thank you card, ran past the doorway holding a tiny ornament. "Look, Mrs. Bennett, I saved this for you." She handed it to me, eyes wide and shining. I knelt to accept it, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture, innocent and genuine, struck me in a way Daniel's words hadn't. Joy could exist without apology. Recognition could come from anywhere, and it didn't need to come from him. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, I want to make it right. Can I help somehow? Can I be part of this? Your life?" I studied him for a moment, weighing his words. "Daniel, I don't need fixing. I needed respect. I needed acknowledgement. And I'm learning that sometimes those things come too late. But yes, you can be part of my life if you're willing to step in without trying to control or rewrite the past." He nodded, swallowing again. There was humility in him now, a quietness I hadn't seen in years. I realized he was learning a lesson that had taken me decades to understand. Love isn't entitlement. Respect isn't automatic. And joy isn't given, it's claimed. A sudden crash in the hallway startled both of us. I rushed over to find a tray of cookies had tipped over, rolling across the floor. The little mishap caused a ripple of laughter from the guests lingering nearby. I bent down, gathering the cookies and handing them back to their owner. Daniel watched silently, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Even small moments, messy or unexpected, could be handled with grace. That grace, I realized, was mine. And it was something he hadn't yet mastered. By the time the evening settled, Daniel had left quietly, saying only, "Thank you, Mom. I'll be more present next time." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The mansion hummed with warmth. The air scented faintly with the fading aroma of roasted chestnuts. I walked through the rooms, brushing my hands along the polished wood, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. I had faced exclusion, heartbreak, and doubt, and I had risen. As I stood by the window one last time, watching the city lights shimmer in the snowfall, I whispered to myself, almost like a secret to the viewer. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't being included. It's finding your own place in the world and claiming your happiness. I smiled, feeling the truth of it sink deep into my bones. That night I didn't wait for recognition, apology, or gratitude. I had already built my joy, my dignity, my home, and in that I realized sometimes exclusion is the best teacher of all. The days after the party were calm, almost surreal. The mansion no longer felt like a quiet house waiting for guests. It felt alive with possibility. I wandered through the halls, brushing my fingers along polished surfaces, noticing subtle reminders of laughter, warmth, and care. Even though the decorations were packed away, the memory of the celebration lingered like a gentle hum, and for the first time in years, I felt deep peace. Daniel called again, but I let it ring. I didn't need to answer right away. Each unanswered ring reminded me that my happiness was no longer tied to his timing, his choices, or his recognition. I was learning, slowly but surely, that the life I created for myself could exist fully, regardless of anyone else's participation. I spent a quiet afternoon in the sunroom, sipping tea and smoothing the tablecloth. Letters from friends who had attended the party lay stacked nearby. One card stood out. Clara, seeing you in your element reminded me what family really means. Warmth, laughter, and love, given freely. Thank you for inviting us into your joy. I smiled, letting the words wash over me. This acknowledgement, gentle and sincere, felt deeper than any apology could have. It was real. It was earned. It was mine. Later that evening, a soft knock came at the door. Ellen peeked in and whispered, "Mrs. Bennet, Daniel is here again. He says he just wants to see you for a moment." I took a deep breath, smoothing my cardigan, and walked to the door. Daniel stood there, shifting from one foot to the other, hands nervously clasped. Something about his awkward stance made me pause. His regret was real, but unpracticed, almost unsure. "Mom, I've been selfish," he said. His words stumbled over themselves. "I left you out, and I see now how wrong that was," sorted him carefully. My heart softened, but my voice stayed calm, deliberate. "Daniel, apologies are kind, but they don't fix what's been lost. What matters now is understanding and presence, not just words." He nodded, swallowing hard. I want to be better. I don't want to repeat my mistakes." I stepped aside and gestured toward the sunroom. "Sit. Let's have tea." We moved together, the sunlight falling in soft golden patches. Daniel's eyes roamed the room, noticing small details. The vase of flowers I had arranged the day after the party, the stack of thank you notes, the faint scent of cinnamon lingering in the air. "I never realized," he said quietly, "how much effort, love, and thought you put into this house, into all of it." I smiled softly, pouring tea and handing him a cup. "It's not about recognition, Daniel. It's about living fully, even when you feel excluded. Sometimes that's the only way to truly teach others what they're missing." He exhaled, relief and regret mixing in his expression. Then he fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve, a small human gesture that made his words feel more genuine. I want to be part of your life, I hope I can earn that back. I nodded. We can. Respect takes time, and joy comes when you let yourself feel it first. At that moment, a child appeared in the doorway, holding a handmade ornament. Look, Mrs. Bennet, I saved this for you. I bent down to accept it, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Daniel watched, silent but attentive. The innocence of her gesture reminded me that joy could come from unexpected places, not just apologies or acknowledgement. As the afternoon faded, I poured us each another cup of tea, steam curling upward. Daniel sipped slowly, occasionally glancing at me, as though measuring my calm resolve. I smoothed the curtain near the window, enjoying the sunlight on my hands. The small acts grounded me, kept me present. Before leaving, Daniel paused at the doorway. Mom, thank you for everything. I'll do better. I smiled softly. I know you will. Life is short. Make every moment count, not just for yourself, but for those who love you. Once he left, I walked through the mansion, brushing my hands along polished surfaces. The air felt lighter, full of quiet energy, of possibility and peace. Exclusion had been the lesson I never wanted, but most needed. It taught me patience, self-respect, and the power of quietly reclaiming my own joy. Standing by the window, I watched snowflakes drift lazily through fading light. The city shimmered below, alive with warmth. I whispered almost like a secret to the audience. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't being included. It's finding your own place in the world, inviting yourself in, and claiming your happiness. Imagine what else you could reclaim if you dared. I smiled, feeling the truth sink deep into my bones. That night I didn't wait for recognition or gratitude. I had already built my joy, my dignity, my home. And in that I realized, sometimes the smallest twists in life bring the most profound lessons. The mansion was quiet, but a small surprise was waiting for me at the door. I hadn't expected anyone, and yet the soft chime of the bell made my heart skip. Ellen peeked in, whispering, "Mrs. Bennet, it's a delivery, and, well, it's addressed to you, but it's from Daniel." I took the package carefully, my fingers brushing over the neat handwriting. "For Mom, a small token to remind you of what you've created and what I hope to learn." I opened it to find a delicate snow globe, a miniature version of the mansion. I shook it gently, watching the snow swirl around the tiny house, and a small smile tugged at my lips. For a moment I felt a flicker of doubt. What if this is just a gesture without meaning? What if he disappoints me again? I set the globe on the mantel and took a slow breath. I had learned the hard way that my peace didn't depend on Daniel, and this was no exception. A soft knock came again. Ellen peeked in. "He's here, Mrs. Bennet. Daniel says he just wants a quick word." I smoothed my cardigan, walked to the door and opened it. Daniel stood there, shifting nervously, hands ringing slightly. His usual confident air was gone, replaced by hesitation. I sensed he wanted to say the right thing but didn't know how. "Mom, I realize I've been selfish," he said, voice low, almost uncertain. "Leaving you out. It was wrong. I see that now." I studied him, heart softening but careful. "Words are easy. What matters is presence, understanding, and learning, not just saying the right thing." He nodded quickly, then paused, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve, fidgeting as if to make sure I believed him. That small hesitation made the apology feel real, human, imperfect and earnest. Sit, I said, stepping aside. Let's have tea. In the sunroom, sunlight cast soft golden patches across the floor. He looked around, noticing the vase of flowers, the faint cinnamon scent lingering from the party, and the stack of thank-you notes. I never realized how much effort you put into this, into all of it, he admitted. I poured tea, offering him a cup. It's not about recognition. It's about living fully, even when others exclude you. That's the lesson I want you to learn, he exhaled, relief and regret mixed in his eyes. I want to be part of your life. I hope I can earn that back. I nodded. We can. Respect takes time, and joy comes when you allow yourself to feel it first. A small sound drew our attention. A child appeared, holding a single handmade ornament. For you, Mrs. Bennet. I made it myself. I bent to accept it, brushing her hair gently from her face. Daniel watched quietly, his gaze softening. The simplicity of the moment reminded me that happiness often comes from the smallest, unexpected gestures, and that it doesn't need repetition to be meaningful. Later, as the snow began to fall outside, I walked through the mansion, noticing the lingering warmth of the party and the little gifts around the house. I sipped tea, feeling the gentle heat spread through my hands. A thought whispered in my mind. Even if Daniel disappoints me again, this house, this joy, is mine to nurture. My phone buzzed. It was Daniel. Mom, thank you for showing me what matters. I'm learning. I hope one day I can give back even a fraction of what you've taught me. I didn't reply immediately. I watched the snow glint against the city lights, letting the quiet sink in. Words weren't necessary. The gesture, the acknowledgement, the small, meaningful acts had already claimed their place. A soft giggle from the hallway caught my attention. Another child, carrying a handful of paper stars, peeked in shyly. For you, Mrs. Bennet? I knelt to accept them, smiling warmly. For a moment I realized the lesson didn't come from Daniel's words alone. It came from reclaiming my own joy, noticing the small blessings around me, and letting life surprise me in its quiet, unexpected ways. I whispered softly to myself, as if sharing a secret with anyone listening. Sometimes being excluded isn't the end. It's the beginning of discovering how much joy you can create on your own. Imagine what else you could reclaim if you dared. And with that, I turned off the lights, letting the golden city glow, remain outside. Sitting by the window, I felt complete. Not because anyone recognized me, not because apologies were made, but because I had found my own place in the world. My dignity, my peace, my joy, all mine, fully claimed. And in that quiet, snowy night, I understood a small truth. Life's greatest lessons often come through gentle surprises, quiet gestures, and the courage to invite yourself into your own happiness.